G'day there guys, it just occurs to me that you don't have any proof that I ever leave this room here. It's your main man Markee and welcome back to another episode of r/AmiTheA. Now if you love today's bloody good content, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn of the Barbie, and enjoy today's bloody good content. Thank you. Posted by user ThrowawayRR. Titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my daughter that she needs to get a real job or move out? So my daughter, 24 female, had to move back in with me and my wife 3 months ago. She used to live in her own apartment since she was 19, but unfortunate events caused her to terminate her lease. Anyway, she's studying at a close-by university and working on her thesis. She's also employed as an assistant, and they pay her on an hourly basis, so she has to document her hours. But they only give her her salary at the end of each semester, which is basically a moderate lump sum. But the fact that she's not receiving a monthly income means that she's not able to pay me rent in due time. I get that she's still studying and that she's my daughter, but I can't have a grown adult woman in my house rent-free. So the other day, I brought up the topic, and she said that she's trying her best, but that she's overwhelmed as is, juggling her assistant work and her studies. I was sort of annoyed at this and told her that her assistant work isn't a real job, that her hours are lenient, and that she needs to get a real job to cover her monthly rent or that she has to move out. She started crying and said that it is a real job and that the lump sum will be just enough to cover her rent and her student loan debt. But I'm still not eager to sit and wait for her on her rent. My wife overheard the conversation and she's really upset with me now. She said that I'm insensitive. My wife is usually at home, and she said that she can tell my daughter is overwhelmed. Apparently, she's working till early hours in the morning and has only been getting an average of 4 to 5 hours of sleep since she moved in with us. She has to submit her thesis soon, which is a major deadline, a month from now. My wife said, it's not like she's loafing or wasting her time doing nothing or playing video games. My wife also told me that my daughter's assistant work is a real job and that she often works extra hours. Sometimes she'll get called in for nonsensical reasons, but that she never heard my daughter complain about it, but that her exhaustion is quite obvious. Well, apparently it's not that obvious. If it was, why didn't I pick up on it? But my wife is ignoring me now, and I'm starting to wonder, am I the a-hole here? I can understand why you would be frustrated that an adult lives with you rent-free in your own household, but this is your child who has been independent since 19 and has now fallen on hard times. They are literally submitting a thesis while still working and doing all of that on 4 to 5 hours of sleep a day. I'm willing to bet all you do is go to your 9 to 5 job and get a healthy 8 hours sleep a day, knowing that you've got a decent, stable life going on. It's not a stretch of the imagination that she's doing it rough right now, and things will get better for her once her workload lightens up a bit. This girl is focused on her career and work, and it seems like she doesn't have time for a social life or anything fun outside of that. Cut her some slack, OP. You're being quite a judgmental a-hole to someone who's struggling and doing their best. Plenty of adults live with their parents rent-free while doing much less. This isn't really anything out of the ordinary. You're the a-hole. Now in the comments, Erica Campbell Fan says, you're the a-hole. You didn't pick up on it because you're an insensitive a-hole who sees his daughter as a money source and not as his child. And honestly, if you don't pull your head from that dark hole it's in, then you'll be lucky to even have a daughter or wife. This is my favorite response to date. Honestly, I'm 64, and my 99-year-old mother would be freaking thrilled if there was any way she could help me out. And if it meant me moving in with her so she could see me more, I can't imagine anything making her happier. Unless OP is seriously in trouble financially, I can't even imagine acting like this as a parent. Yeah, you're the a-hole big time. I was expecting to read about some deadbeat daughter who can't be bothered to work or study at all, but it sounds like your daughter is doing her best, and her best seems pretty effing good, and you should be proud of her, not degrade her and her work. You should be ashamed of yourself. Unless that money is all that's keeping you from the homeless shelter, you should really shut your mouth about it. Oh, and exhaustion and burnout is pretty noticeable if you pay attention to someone at all, especially someone you live with. Sounds like you need to really examine your attitude. I second this. She's working herself into exhaustion, and you're too wrapped up in, but the rent. She's not even saying she's not paying at all, just delaying it until a foreseeable future date. You're running the risk of being a failure as a parent. You're the a-hole. Running the risk? He's already there. God, no wonder so many people have daddy issues these days. Also makes me wonder why she was already moved out and on her own at 19 with no plans of coming back. Most people I know aren't that enthusiastic about getting away from dad. You're the a-hole. A thesis by itself is a full-time job, and it sounds like her assistant work is full-time hours on top of that. She's likely working harder than you ever have. He posted and deleted a comment saying, "When I was her age, I was already out of the house and in a steady relationship, but I never went to university like her." She's definitely working harder than he did at her age. He also posted and deleted a comment where he even acknowledged that she told him how she gets paid and that she will pay him once her salary comes in. So he knew what would happen, but still chose to firmly stick his head up his posterior. Posted by user Pizza Pepperoni, titled, "Am I the a-hole for reporting my teacher and potentially getting him fired?" So my 16 female school requires us to keep our cameras on during the entire class. If we need to use the restroom, we're supposed to privately message our teacher and ask to leave. I have absolutely no issue with these rules, as I understand that online teaching is hard and you have to make sure everyone is attentive during class. We also have this system where, at the end of the week, every student is emailed a Google document in which we're supposed to type out any problems we had with the classes during the week. For example, a teacher is favoring a student, etc. On Thursday, I had a math class which was taught by Mr. T. He's never really been very strict and had always seemed quite reserved and quiet. Of course, I've never been in a lesson with him outside of online school, so I can't really judge. During the class, I realized I had started my period. I privately messaged Mr. T asking if I could use the restroom. I waited for 10 minutes, but he didn't reply, so I messaged him again, still no reply. By now, I was getting extremely uncomfortable, so I texted him for the third time explaining that I had started my period and I really have to go. He replies with, "You should have planned better. Learn to control yourself." What? I can't control my period. I tried to explain that I couldn't, but he didn't respond. I got annoyed and switched off my camera anyways and left the bathroom. Once I came back, I saw that he had kicked me out of the meeting. I later found out that he had written me for switching my camera and I was given a warning. I was pissed. Since it was a Thursday, I received the Google Doc and I complained about Mr. T in it. Today, Thursday, I found out, through my mother, who is also a teacher, that Mr. T is being investigated as there have been multiple complaints about his behavior and mine was apparently the last straw. My dad, brother, and a few of my friends are calling me an a-hole, as I could have just waited for a while instead of complaining and potentially making a man lose his job, especially during this time. I don't know. I'm feeling really guilty right now. I don't want him to lose his job. Am I the a-hole? You had your period during the lesson and asked him multiple times to go to the bathroom in a discreet fashion, and he knowingly ignored you. Like, you got a response from him telling you to plan better, which is just absolutely uncalled for in this situation. Don't pity this fool if he loses his job. Mr. T obviously doesn't care about you, so why should you care about him? Replace him with someone who has some semblance of self-respect, and let Mr. T find somewhere else to work, I say. And this is obviously not the first time he's done this. If he's being investigated, there's more than just this going on. That's not someone you want in a position of power, so I say good riddance. Not the a-hole, you did the right thing, OP. And in the post, OP adds an edit and says, "Oh my god, this post and its comments are such a relief. I've been stressing over his supposed firing for the entire day. Thanks to everyone who commented, it really helped me. I've also sent this post to my dad and he hasn't responded yet." Now in the comments, Levitating Loser says, "Your dad, brother, and friends, who I assume are also male, are the a-holes. I'm so effing tired of men thinking we can just hold in our period blood the way you can with your bladder. This is a grown-ass man teaching a class of kids that are probably half female. He should know the bare basics about menstruation and how to address if a female student is having an issue. You are not the a-hole. If this was a long time coming and you were just the final straw, he should be fired. It blows my mind that someone can reach adulthood thinking a period can be held in. WTF do they think the pads and tampons are for? Why would anyone buy that crap if we could just hold it in? It makes no sense. What the hell do men learn in sex ed? I mean, I know American sex ed is pretty crappy, but do they not, at the very least, teach them what periods are? You didn't make him lose his job. If it happens, he did it to himself. Definitely not the a-hole. I remember the one time I unexpectedly got my period during lunch break and went to the male teacher that I had after lunch to explain what happened, and asked if I could go home to get clean underwear and pads and arrive late in class. Probably about 10 minutes late. We had a test that day, so I was really worried. The poor man went beet red, but he told me to go home and not worry about the test. I could stay after class to finish the test if I hadn't enough time after my return. Even though he was uncomfortable, he didn't say anything to make me feel bad, but he supported me, enabled me to take care of things, and made sure I could take my test. At the time, I was happy and relieved, but stories like this make me realize how lucky I actually was. Yeah, unfortunately, getting basic respect and understanding for uncontrollable body functions is lucky. I got mine in the middle of a class once, and my male teacher told me that I was irresponsible and should have used the bathroom before class instead of making out with my boyfriend. Just what every 14-year-old needs, to be slut-shamed and period-shamed at the same time. Posted by user Star Wars 20. Titled, "Would I be the a-hole for having a Star Wars-themed wedding?" So my fiancé and I recently got engaged on Valentine's Day 2021. We're hoping to get married in the next 2 years, so almost every conversation we have at the moment is about wedding planning. Star Wars has been a huge influence on my life ever since I was a kid. I've watched all the movies more times than I could possibly count, and it's something nearly all of my family and friends enjoy too. So when I was thinking of wedding planning ideas, it seemed obvious that we should be doing something Star Wars related. I've been brainstorming ideas and I have some really great themed ideas. For example, alcoholic blue milk drinks to serve guests, hiring stormtroopers to party and dance, Jedi robes for all of my groomsmen, and playing Across the Stars for the first dance. While I have more typically nerdy interests, my fiancé isn't really interested in most movies or games. She's very much a typical girly girl, and the type of person who has been planning her wedding since she was very young. She has some very specific ideas about what our wedding should look like, much more formal and glamorous than I'd imagined, and her vision definitely doesn't include lightsabers. The problem is that my fiancé really doesn't want anything Star Wars related at our wedding at all. All of my suggestions so far have been shot down without further discussion. One solution I suggested was that we could plan half the wedding, like she handles the ceremony and I plan the reception. That way we could both have what we want. However, my fiancé says that plan would make me the a-hole because even having a Star Wars-themed reception would be an embarrassment in front of everyone we know. From my perspective, this is my wedding too, and I should get to decide at least half of the day. While money isn't much of an issue, we share finances, so I'm paying enough to get a say too. Am I the a-hole for wanting a Star Wars themed wedding, even though my fiancé really doesn't? Just because she is disagreeing with you on these choices doesn't mean you can't incorporate smaller themes of Star Wars into the wedding that are more tasteful than what you've suggested. Not everyone enjoys Comic-Con level role-playing Star Wars and full-on setups like you're trying to plan for this wedding. Forcing that issue does make you an a-hole because she never agreed to that side of the wedding, but you have been dating her the entire time under the agreement of what her dream wedding looks like. You don't just get to the actual planning of the wedding part if you disagreed with her ideas for an ideal wedding. It seems like you somewhat sprung this on your fiancé last minute and are upset that she can have her wedding her way, but you can't have it your way. That makes you a failure in communication and toxic if you're putting up a fuss about it. Yes, people should make plans unilaterally. And unfortunately, you've agreed to her terms and she hasn't agreed to yours. Just try toning your ideas down a couple notches to where it's more socially acceptable and not so in your face, and I imagine this wouldn't be such a big deal. As it stands though, I'm going you're the a-hole. Now in the comments, Cat in an Oak Tree says, "You're the a-hole. Not because you want to say, but it is clear that you're trying to dominate the theme despite her seemingly solid opposition. You get a say, you don't get a unilateral choice. Receptions should reflect the overall theme and tone of the wedding. Having a very white tie wedding and a cosplay level reception is discordant. It also sounds like something she is very much against. You need a compromise, both of you. But right now, I don't see what you're offering as any concession towards how she feels. You will also find society largely will back the bride on this." My biggest takeaway is the theme of the wedding should be about love, and if they have never bonded over Star Wars, then why should it be included? I mean, maybe the blue drinks and having a bartender dressed as a Jedi or Stormtrooper, but this is his passion and interest, not hers. You only do themed weddings of that magnitude when it's a shared interest. That's my thinking. Theme weddings are awesome, but that's because the theme means something to both the bride and groom. Why doesn't the groom have a Star Wars themed bachelor party? Agreed. It doesn't sound like OP really wants a Star Wars themed wedding as much as he wants a Star Wars themed party. Only the first dance song is something that's exclusive to weddings. Everything else can be done at a bachelor party or even a birthday party if he wanted. I appreciate that it means a lot to him, but unless the chosen theme is relevant to the relationship, then it doesn't need to be a part of the wedding itself. I think this is a good distinction and a great idea. Don't get me wrong, a Star Wars themed party sounds like gas, but if the bride's not into it, that would be incredibly uncomfortable at a wedding. It sounds like OP also wants a quite large-scale Star Wars party, on the scale that weddings normally take place at. Bachelor party or a milestone birthday would definitely be appropriate. You're the a-hole. Jedi robes? Paid stormtroopers? It sounds so over the top that your wedding would be more of a spectacle than a celebration of your love and life together. Is this really the hill you want to die on? Is your identity that wrapped up in a franchise that you want it to monopolize a day meant to be shared and about your love? And as a wedding planner, there are a lot of ways to use your theme without it being overpowering. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but my first thoughts are place card settings, table names, a wishing well tree with the caption, "May the Force be with us." Get some lightsabers so that when you and your groomsmen take your pictures, you can do a fun photo op with that. Besides the wedding cake, have a small dessert table with some themed items. The most important part of all of this is that you and your fiancé agree and enjoy this time planning your special day. I love all of these ideas. Also, you could get a groom's cake that's Star Wars themed. You can also incorporate nice Star Wars themed things to yourself, like cufflinks. My husband wore Star Wars cufflinks and socks on our big day. I think you could get the blue milk drink in there too. Posted by user Ali Baron 2021. Titled, "Am I the a-hole I locked my entire alley up. So last year, I bought a house in my area. A really wonderful old red brick. When I was in the process of buying it, I discovered that the purchase also includes the entirety of the alley. I asked the realtor if this was true, and they said yes. I went to the courthouse to double check and confirmed it. So I buy the house, I meet some of the neighbors, and I make a joke about charging them rent to use my alley. They flipped out. I was not looking at starting a war, so I kind of just let it blow over. Then, winter arrived, and the neighbors started demanding I have the alley plowed every time it snowed. Because I own the alley and I'm responsible for it. One of them told me they would sue me if they slipped and fell in the alley. I don't believe they were joking. I paid a friend $25 a month to plow the alley every time it snows to keep them happy. But during this time, I was also talking with some people at the courthouse. As soon as the snow started to melt in my area, I got a hold of some local contractors and had them build a gate at the entrance of the alley that I keep locked. I've also posted trespass warning signs on the gate. It's all completely legal, and I made sure of it before I did this. Now the neighbors are just livid. Basically, everyone's calling me an a-hole, including my family. One final note, I'm only here to settle a debate with my sister. Regardless if I'm an a-hole or not, the alley isn't going to be opened up again. You don't threaten me with a good time. For anyone who doesn't know any better, the alley has 2 garages that open to it. I would have figured most of you would realize an alley may have a garage. I guess not. I didn't intentionally leave that fact out, but after everyone started howling about it, I decided to wait until I was done here to edit the main post. I'll update if I ever get sued into oblivion. Lots of love. I think I've read through enough legal advice to get a general idea of the type of thing going on here. In my humble and unexperienced opinion, I agree with your decision to lock that alley up and post trespass signs on it. Being threatened with being sued because people are genuinely trespassing through your property, that wouldn't sit right with me if I were you, and neither should it. Yes, it would be hard to see if you're being unreasonable, what with your family and neighbors making convincing arguments based off of precedent with that alleyway, but morally and legally, what you're doing is in your best interests. Look after yourself first. You're not harming them by doing this. All you're doing is making things a little inconvenient for people. Boo-hoo! Go cry somewhere else and take the long way round. So yeah, you've done the right thing in my view, so I'm going not the a-hole. Now in the comments, Porty Lover says, not the a-hole. Someone threatened to sue you over a perceived potential hazard. You blocked access to the hazard. That's a reasonable response. Problem solved, and enjoy your alley. Yup. Every single person who bitches about it, I would be pointing at exactly who threatened to sue for liability because it is, as they put it, your property. And don't forget to say to the ones complaining, this is why we can't have nice things. Karma. Not the a-hole. The second someone jokes about liability or tells you to have it plowed, you close it. Agreed. Why not extend your property so that it's not an alley anymore? It's part of your land, or use it for storage, etc. That changes the psychology of it all if it's not seen as a blocked-off alley, but as private property serving some other function. Might not be possible depending on how it's set up. I'm personally envisioning 2 strips of houses with their backs facing each other and OP owning the alley in between them. Not a very practical extended backyard. And Cake or Death 98 says, everyone sucks here. I think you set the tone for your relationship with your neighbors in your first interaction by joking about being the alley landlord, and that you were going to charge them rent to use your alley. I think most people would agree that kind of joke was probably a poor choice, given you were literally just meeting them. They really had no idea if you were joking, but actually meant it. And frankly, it's not weird to be a bit put off by someone who jokes about charging you rent within minutes of meeting you. Plus, some people just have a demeanor, tone, and personality that makes it hard to tell when they're joking. And while I know tone is hard to interpret in writing, I kinda get the impression that you might be one of those people. I think it's quite likely that they didn't think that you were serious and that you joking about it was actually just you informing them. Like the landlord who does some routine or necessary maintenance to your apartment and jokes about raising your rent, and then raises your rent. So, if these people thought that you weren't joking, they probably have the attitude of, oh, well, if it's his alley, then he can take care of it himself. I would be curious to know what the neighbors did for the plowing before you bought the house. Then you got one a-hole who makes the "I'll sue you" threat. So you decide to block access to all the neighbors and cut off access to people's garages? I mean, yes, you have the legal right to do so, but exactly how do you think this is going to play out? You've literally made all of your neighbors hate you. How pleasant of a living experience are you going to have now? You seem to be one of those people that doesn't care what other people think as long as you're right, and that's all fine and dandy. But I'm not sure what you're gaining here from being right. You would probably answer, not get sued, which is true, but again, you kind of set that aggressive tone yourself from the very start. And while you may have the legal right to block the access, I think it's pretty foolish of you to think that you can't be sued for access rights unless the people at the courthouse were property lawyers. You just seemed kind of smug about the whole thing, but you just basically made yourself a pariah. Whether that's right or wrong doesn't matter, it's the reality. Now you have a new house that is surrounded by people who think you're an a-hole. Honestly, you move into the neighborhood, immediately start joking about being the alley landlord and charging people rent. Your response to one angry person threatening to sue is to screw over all of your neighbors. You literally blocked access to people's garages. You don't want to sell them access rights. You made sure it's perfectly legal. You kinda sound like a jerk. I guess if being right and it's perfectly legal are more important to you than being glared at every time you step out of your door and being bad-mouthed to everyone, then I guess you have nothing to be worried about. I'm kinda surprised it took me this long to find an everyone sucks here. Yes, the neighbors are a-holes for threatening to sue or whatever, but OP is clearly being an a-hole too. It's truly amazing how often people in this subreddit confuse something that you are within your rights to do with something that does not make you the a-hole. Alright guys, I think that's where I'm going to end today's video. If you need a good laugh, please do check out my second channel, Markee 2, links down in the description below, or it's going to appear somewhere on the screen here at the end, little bubble with my face on it. As always, a big shout out to my Patreon and channel members. Your faces are surrounding me right now, and I love to have you guys with me, and down in the comment sections of each and every video, and just knowing that you're always there to support me. It's a humbling and lovely feeling. And rest assured, I do see you, and I do notice your support, and I thank you every day for being here and helping me along this journey. Not much else to say besides that, guys. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. I do hope that you have a good day, night, sleep, whatever you're up to. I will see you in the next video, and thank you again. Bye.